Hi, Sarah.
Hey, Steff. How are you?
Good, good.
Ready?
Super excited for this one. I'm already all kind of, ready for it. I'm sitting in the posing studio. I've had a whole morning of posing with clients, and I thought this is the perfect place to sit and talk after I've been active at it this morning. So, yeah. How are you?
Yeah, good. I think in the same sort of token, it's when you go from like an off season to a prep, you forget about the posing element. And then when I've just come off the back of prep and I haven't done like my mandatories and everything for like a week and a half, it's like it soon sort of goes out of your mindset as a competitor. So it's really relevant that you said, working with people this morning and then coming to do a pod about it, it's fresh, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think I was speaking to Andrew about this last night. Posing, it's like riding a bike. Once you've learned, you know it. But if you don't do it regularly, you become out of touch and out of practice with the manipulations and the feeling of rotations and the feeling of just generally how it sits into your body. And I think, like muscle memory, when we're training in the gym, posing, I reference this in my posing classes quite a lot. You're teaching the body a set of movements to remember and get better over time. And posing itself is isolation work. It's almost like, it's a type of resistance training in itself, where you're trying to hold and tense certain muscle groups for certain periods of time in a certain position. Mm-hmm. So it takes a lot of practice, and when you have been out of it for a wee while, coming back into it, you're a wee bit rusty, but then you can start to get back into that flow once you've got the mechanics nailed down again.
Yeah, I think today, we can cover so much. Yeah. If we can touch on the importance of posing is the name of the pod today. So that's our umbrella term, but then it's even, posing fitness. How often should you pose? Do you need a posing coach? What do you wear when you go for a posing lesson? Tapping into group sessions that your federation potentially might offer, how much you should pay for posing, all of those things that I personally, as a first-time competitor and for a while, didn't really understand that. And when I first went into bodybuilding, when I first saw those people on the stage at my first ever show I watched, I just thought you had to diet.
Yeah.
I really didn't. I just thought, well, they're doing poses, and I just thought that would be something that'd be really easy to do. Yeah. And then consequently, till I found you, I was on this sort of hamster wheel of feeling very stressed about the posing because I just could not get the tuition I needed, basically.
Yeah.
One recommendation I would give is get a one-to-one posing coach and posing lessons as the overarching bit of advice today, because it is so personal.
And it is so personal.
Yeah. You need a posing coach that's going to look at your physique.
Yes.
And it's so underrated and people don't really talk about it. No one did to me until I found you and I realized, but that was 5 years into the journey. It's a hard journey anyway, isn't it?
It is. And I think you've hit the nail on the head with, like anything, coaching is, you've got to have a connection with the coach, and that's the same in posing. A good posing coach should be able to assess the physical, the physique itself, but then see where that potential client is maybe lacking. And that might not just be in the physique. It might be in their confidence. It might be in, their self-belief and understanding that they can actually do this. And suddenly when you start to work on some of the other elements of the competitor, their posing begins to actually become alive. We can actually start to play with shapes. Anybody can tell anyone to stand like this with one arm out, or put your elbows forward or whatever, but there's a whole other element of posing where your personality has to meet your posing somewhere, and the two then start to just become a whole stage performance that will help you then upscale your package that you're bringing. Because you might bring the best package in the world to the stage, but if your posing is weak, and we've all been there, if your posing is weak, and say you're up there in the runnings, you could potentially lose by a few points just because that person standing next to you has just beat you on the punch with the stage presentation and the performance and showcasing the physique. So now more than ever, when posing and the stage presentation is more visual, like we see it on, we see it on social media, these shows are much more, I would say, marketed in terms of, what they want to see on stage, that it's become more prevalent now more than ever that you need to do your work on the presentation side of your physique, not just banking on being in the best condition.
Yeah, because I definitely as well, when we first met, I really liked how we spent maybe 20 minutes and you asked me what my background as a competitor was, what posing I'd already done, and why I was bodybuilding. And It was like, first of all, you're building rapport with your client, which is so important. But then that bring to the forefront why I was even competing in the first place. Mm-hmm. And when we went into the actual lesson and the practical part of it, that was there, and I was able to then, my passion that I'd brought out by you asking the right questions then went into the lesson. And it was a massive, as I've spoken about before on pods, and as you know, that lesson changed my life in regards to how confident I felt. The moment you said to me I had potential as a competitor, it was like, are you sure? And then that then went into me winning my first show after 5 years of competing. So the mindset behind posing as well, and the confidence, it's unbelievable, isn't it?
It's massive because everyone's going to be at a different stage of the journey, but the majority of times the people that I work with are completely first timers, are people who are very fresh to it. And those questions are really key, because you are standing on stage in front of hundreds of people, potentially, complete strangers that are judging you. You do want to bring out your best, but you need to almost go on a journey with yourself to find your inner confidence for what this means to you and why you want to do it. So that, and I know I remember speaking to you, Sarah, and I speak to quite a lot of people about this, about visualization of you being on the stage, and actually, regardless of the placing, owning that spot of just pure confidence and me, and this is what I've managed to achieve, and look at the journey from A to B, and all of that culminates in this glow up. I'm here, I've arrived, and I'm ready to do my thing because I've practiced it and I know. And I think that's more rewarding sometimes than the placing itself, when you realize how much work you put into it and that people around you really value that. And I certainly know that every single one of, yourself included, every single one of my posing clients that I work with, I'm a small piece of that journey. But that's, if I can help someone just tweak something to bring an element of stage presence to their overall look, and they get the photos back and they feel like they really own that I feel extremely accomplished. And I feel that's just a really great thing.
Such a big thing, isn't it? And even with the posing transferable skills, so investing in a posing coach like yourself, I was then able to exhibit my physique much better in things like my progress photos. So consequently, Stephen, my coach, was able to get much more reliable visuals because I could exhibit my posing much better in the check-in photos. He can then adapt my nutrition and training as an example. And that's a massive thing. Like, it's unreal how that could potentially be your difference between you placing, not placing, being successful as a bodybuilder. Because you know what it's like when you do your first lot of posing or progress photos for your coach, you're literally like, you're just so rigid and like, I really don't want to do these. And it's just like front, back and side. Once you start getting your confidence and your posing right, your coach, if it's online coaching, obviously, they can go, okay, so this, we need to work on here, the training needs to direct here. So the investment of a posing coach isn't just your stage performance, it's everything as a bodybuilder.
Yeah, totally. And it's a massive element, exactly as you said, to where you can receive constructive feedback, because when you are standing in the relevant poses, it allows you to showcase, yes, your strengths, but it really shows a coach where we're weaker. And it can then help, structure your programming. It can help, obviously, be really, really useful for knowing how to connect in training. Like, I have a lot of posing clients that come in and will be working on their lat spread, for example, or they're flaring up their lats. And I'll notice very clearly where someone's maybe activating their lats properly and where somebody isn't. Maybe when it's coming into the traps and pulling forward, or just the roundness of their rear delts are maybe not quite as full as the front. And those are really key things I can feed back to somebody like yourself, who can then, exactly as you've said, go back to coach and start working on these checking photos and videos and connect with the training as well. So then going and giving exercises to really improve the frame. So they're vital. They're so, so useful. And if the goal is stage, holding yourself in those poses, I often talk about the woman who trains and then the woman who's a competitor. The two are very different. You've got somebody who can just train and train and train and stand in the gym and flex a little bit and look great. But then flexing in the poses, that's when you become the competitor. And that's when you then have to look at your physique really carefully and go, okay, where do I need to improve here to make sure that this frame that I'm trying to stand in is to its fullest potential? And so, yeah, I mean, there's so much more you can get from the actual posing sessions than just for the stage element. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I guess a good thing to cover as well would be, say you're a first timer or you're going into a different federation. So on the website, normally they have a breakdown, don't they, of what the criteria is and what the poses are.
Yeah.
How would you, if you were a first timer and you didn't have a posing coach, you maybe had a coach, but as in to do your nutrition and training, but you weren't sure about the sort of posing elements and what the federations are looking for. If someone wasn't in a position to get a posing coach, have you got any advice as to how they would tackle that until maybe they could warrant getting their own posing coach?
Yeah, I think there's some key things with all posing that competitors can work on without a posing coach. Well, the first thing is going and obviously doing your research online and having a look to see what videos you can grab a hold of and see if you can start to, what I call, mirror what you see. The small issue with that is you could learn mistakes that might not be right for the federation. And I have to admit, there's been a lot of people I've had in my studios who have said it's been so difficult to find anything that is really connected with them, that they're not having to pay quite a lot of money for to watch online. Key things when learning the basics of posing is not to run before you can walk. So I have a few people come in and say, oh, I've had a go at certain things, and I can see that they're trying a lot of elaborate transitions, but maybe we haven't got the basics right. And I have two, I kind of call it two routines. You've got the poses themselves, statutory poses, and then you have the transitions. For somebody who's just starting, put the transitions aside completely.
Yeah.
And just focus on the 4 or 5, depending on what class it is. Let's take your class there, the 4 key bikini poses. 1, side 2, back 3, side 4. And you come back round to the front and think about what you're trying to display. So you're trying to think shoulders, you're trying to think, obviously, keeping your waist nice and tight, you're trying to open up your body, and you're trying to think about where are the judges. That's the key thing I always say to people, and also anybody who's maybe not come into the studio, is anybody looking down at you up, you have to angle forward, and anybody looking at you from the down up facing the rear, you have to lean back. So there's kind of little key things to remember. Starting, it's just about key small things. Foot placement, find a picture of a bikini front shot, side shot, back shot, side shot, and think, where do I place my feet? Travel up the body, where do I place my body? Where do I place my arms? And that would be the very first thing I would do, is look at foot placement. I go through the body like a transformer and work your way up through the body and try and get at least 4 straight key poses first. And then once you feel like you've maybe got that, then you can start to play with that. I would recommend to everybody, if you can, to work with a posing coach, because it shouldn't be taken lightly, posing. It showcases all the time the effort and hard work that you've put in. Whether it's your first competition or whether you're a completely seasoned athlete, practicing and receiving that constructive feedback from somebody like myself, who I come from an anatomical choreography, dance, physical background. I can literally see a physique in the correct shapes instantly, and when it's not right or when it's right. And that critical feedback, just like your normal coach would with your training, for your posing is going to be paramount to ensure that you're showing yourself the best you can. And you know what it's like as well, Sarah, we're all very, especially in prep, we get to the point where we're second guessing ourselves on the training and the nutrition front. You're doing the same thing with the posing. You're doing the same thing. And so having that necessary person to tap in with, whether it's online or in person, far out, then getting a bit, more volume closer to it, and then maybe really close to your show. Like I've been working with girls in their peak week this morning, stage presence, poise, confidence, owning that spot and learning all the key things and the phases that you need to go through to be as good as you possibly can be in the body you currently have at that point is going to be key. So the recommendation to have a posing coach if you can is a big one. Yeah.
And could, I guess, for people that were in that scenario, and if they could maybe then warrant, one lesson, I would still definitely say, even if you can have the one lesson.
Yeah, even if you can have just the one, that will still give you so much to go by. Like some sort of practice things that I would say to consider. I mean, you mentioned a few things before we came on the call, Sarah, but a lot of people, when they first come into the studio, or even just first send me a video and say, can you have a look at this before we start, will be wearing, like, say, a pair of flat hot pant shorts, which are sort of cutting them in half, if you like, and a crop top, which is fine, and a pair of heels. What I would recommend for anybody, not even if you're with a coach yet, is to buy yourself a practice suit or a bikini that sits on your hips pretty high, because that's going to be able to give you illusion already before you've even begun. You'll see shape in your physique. The structure of the suit is huge, and we could obviously go on to that, but getting yourself an actual posing bikini, practice bikini, which you can, or getting just a bikini that's flexible enough to pull right up, Jane Fonda style, right up on your hips, to really get yourself into a nice petite X frame, depending on what class you're looking at. It's going to be really useful for you to see your shape come to life at first as well.
And would you say frequency wise, we have spoken about this before on previous pods, in a prep I do every day is the moment I start a prep, and you've sort of mirrored that, that's what you advise. In off season, I know that you sort of said it is person dependent, which it is, but I don't tend to do it that much. I do a bit in the gym and stuff, but I do think that, there is that underlying that you could probably do, everyone could probably do it a little bit more in off season.
Yeah, I mean, prep practice should be daily. Posing is fatiguing. And, we've probably all seen the competitors who are what I call unpracticed on stage now, and more now than ever you can really see it. The girls or guys as well who have maybe not done their diligence to their posing or practice much, and they start to fatigue and their physique start to fade quicker on stage. The other thing we notice is also like the sweating, especially with men. If you've not had the fitness embed in your practice daily, you will find you'll perspire a lot more on stage. Your fitness will be a lot more fatigued. You'll blur. Your actual condition will start to go if you've not tensed properly for a long time. So, in prep, practice should be daily in order for it to appear effortless when it gets there.
That's the goal.
And that's the goal. And, if I give you an ideal timetable of what it should look like in a prep, with my guys that I prep, I get them doing 10 to 15 minutes every morning when they first get up. It's actually part of their cardio protocols for me as a prep coach. But if I was saying to pose it, one of my posing clients, get yourself a timer, like an interval timer, set a high timer and a low timer, 20 seconds on a high timer, 10 seconds on a low timer. For 20 seconds, you're going to hold. When you hear that beep, you've got 10 seconds to transition, get to the pose and hold. And that's your second into your 20 seconds again for the next pose. And that will build what I call posing fitness.
Yeah.
It never gets easy. It never, ever gets easy. I'm going to say that now. Even for me, when I'm at, literally in my final few weeks, you're tired, you're training every day, you're on low calories. The posing is hard, like really hard.
Really matters you at that stage as well. And I even feel like the central nervous system takes a bit of that. Because you are, like we say, in the trenches. But you are, everything's against you to be able to add additional expenditure. And definitely in this prep that I've just finished, like there was times where I just think, I'll do it a bit later. I'll do it a bit later. And then I've had to double up the following day maybe, because I'd always want to have, I was doing like 20 minutes a day. So if that one day it was just like, I cannot bring myself to do it, then I would do 40 minutes the next day. And then you're at that sort of point where you're then going to have a bit of a negative connotation with doing it because you're so overtrained and whatever. So it's trying to, you know, the getting up early and doing it first thing for me is ideal. You don't even think about it.
Yeah, you don't. And what's really good about it is it actually emulates a stage day condition. You're not going to be full. Your stomach's going to be flat. You're going to be really, really, you know, you're not going to be bloated. You've not had a lot of food and water. So you're going to be emulating as close to stage condition as possible.
And you're tighter, aren't you?
Yeah, you are. You're tighter. Your body will be less stressed at that point in the morning because you've had sleep. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, the practice will allow your body just to be naturally more comfortable on stage. And trust me, like, even though it's hard in those later stages, like we've just explained there, Sarah, you get up on stage and your adrenaline is going and you're just loving it in that moment. You don't realize that actually, if you have done the practice, and I've seen this, where a competitor is like a statue, they're just hold, quarter turn, lovely fluid transition, smashed it, hold. And the staticness of somebody who's got good posing, you can't not look at them. It's so transfixing when somebody is posing elegantly but with a steadiness that you only get from practice. Only get it from practice. And it's quite amazing now when you see some people who have really upped their game in terms of bringing a presentation and polished posing to the stage. And for me, I would want everyone to be like that, you know?
Yeah, because there's complexities in itself to that, isn't, you know, like we've spoken about before, which is really difficult when you're of an ilk that, for me and you, bodybuilding is, we work really hard and we want to exhibit our posing and our physique. And then you do see a lot, particularly bikini, all the funny hand movements and all the moving around, and they're at the back of the stage and they're doing things with the hands and what have you. And, you know, I've always been of that ilk of wanting to not do that.
Yeah. And that's an interesting point there, though, because, you know, everybody I have in has a slightly different style, and I'll work with the style of the competitor. Like, some people are fast and poppy with their movements. Some people are slow and more elegant. Excuse me. Some people have got, you know, they're quite expressionate with their hands or with their face. And these are all things to consider. But not everybody's the same. And you don't want to be the same as every other girl on stage. You know, you want to have something that is unique to you, but within a boundary. So that, you know, if we're starting to go too crazy with the hand positions, if we're starting to bring in too many like crass sort of poses, you know, pushing back in the glutes too much, or sitting, you know, into poses which are just maybe blurring the lines of class a little bit, there's things that you obviously can pull back on. But yeah, it's about finding that
the balance,
utilizing your strengths. Yeah, if you know you're quite a high energy person, like I'm quite a high energy person, I don't really move that like crazy slow and sexy. I'm not that kind of person.
Yeah, me
neither. But somebody else will be. Do you know what I mean? Somebody else will be a lot more like attitudey and have all that. I'm a bit more like poppy and energetic. So every time somebody walks into my studio, I'm working with that energy before they've even started. I want to know kind of how they're at, how they're moving, what they're doing, so that we can bring an element of that into the posing. And then some other key things to help those things that you're talking about, is to be mindful of how you're practicing. So in a posing studio, obviously with me, like here, you've got me eyes on you the whole time, so I can talk to you about things. I take videos, send obviously tutorials, and the instructions of what to do. But when you go home, you want to be practicing half in a mirror, but then I would say 3/4 away. So, you know, because the mirror gives you feedback that helps you feel confident in it. Whereas when you take the mirror out of the equation, you're having to intuitively tap in and feel yourself and get yourself into that zone of confidence with it and the flow of the movement, which is then going to emulate how you're going to act on stage, because you don't have the mirror obviously on stage. So that's important, is a key point there. I don't know how you feel about the non-posing with the mirror.
Yeah, and also a good point there is, if you get too used to doing it in the mirror, when it comes to show day, you're like, where's my mirror?
how am I doing this?
Yeah, and then you get that like deer in headlights. Oh shit, I haven't practiced without the mirror. And I did that in one of my preps into a show, and it was just like, oh shit. So now I do what you said, and sometimes I maybe do like 15 minutes in the mirror and 5 minutes without, or other days I do the opposite, try and mix it in. And also, funny thing, like I've got my dog, so if I'm doing it with them in front of me, I pretend that like I look at them like I would judges.
Yeah.
Because you know what it's like from a judging point of view. When you see people make eye contact with the judges, you draw the judges into your aura, and that could be the difference in your placing.
Yeah, huge.
And when you start to judge physiques, you know, when I judged at the UK UP show last weekend, the difference from when someone comes from behind that curtain to the front of the stage and then on, when they come in and they don't really look like they want to be there, it almost makes you feel like you don't want to watch them.
Yeah, and this is a huge piece. And, you know, I talk about this kind of in stages. You've got the foundations, which is getting the posing down. Yeah. You've then got the layers that come on top here. One of those further layers, and I've got a whole lot I go through, but one of them there is expression. Yeah. And your attitude and how you display your face and how you come on and the energy you bring onto stage is going to actually, it's psychology. You know, if you see somebody really enjoying themselves and you see somebody light up in their face as well as their body, you're more inclined to watch them. It's just a psychological human behavior. You want to see the person smiling, enjoying themselves, or even if it's not a full smile, just something that lifts the eyes and the face. And, you know, if you're coming, and this is so true, right? If you come on stage and you are a bit attitudey and you're a bit arsey and you're a little bit like diva-esque, it really doesn't go down too well in terms of, you know, who's watching you. I mean, obviously your physique has to do the talking, but even for audience people watching you as a spectator, it doesn't give you a humble outlook to the sport generally. Does that make sense? So it kind of can go against you a wee bit. So things like that are very important. The expression you bring in your face and how and you want to look like you actually want to be there. Yeah,
because like you said, you know, if you look like you're enjoying it, you become, you know, you've got that, you become like you're mesmerized. You know, some of the people that were on the stage when I was judging, I'm like, wow, I want to look at this physique and this person more.
Yes.
And then you think, no, I will look at everyone else. But, you know, sometimes as well, people go to the back of the stage and they like just stand there.
Yeah.
Oh, and switch off.
Yeah.
That's big. That is big. Like, you need to remember when you're on stage, you're being judged at all times. Even if they've done the call outs, you've done your quarter turns and everything's done, you never know.
No. I mean, a few key things I always sort of say. When you're on, the second you stand on, you walk on, you're performing. Wherever you are, if you're on the side of the stage, the back of the stage, the front of the stage, wherever, you cannot afford at any point to switch up. So if you've got Judge A and B on separate sides of the table, and Judge A has got his thoughts on you, Judge B has maybe got his thoughts on someone else, and they switch you to the back, Judge A may be still looking at you at the back trying to work that out. And if you suddenly switch your physique off, faces dropped, you've just kind of, you know, let it go. It is gonna factor into your placings again. Some other like key things on stage that I often talk about is angling your posing in towards the judges, wherever you are, whether you're on the side of the stage, back of the stage, front of the stage, wherever. If you know that you've got a panel of 10 judges and say you're the girl right on the far left, you can't afford to do your poses flat to the front. Does that make sense? You have to angle them in so that judge on the far right can see you on the far left. So it's all about being a smart competitor on stage, angling your posing to where the judges are looking, never switching off, keeping your head up at all times, never looking at your feet. I can't tell you how much I need to stress this one. Holding the pose. When you're called, get into the shot, get into the shot. Don't fanny about for half an hour doing a wonderful, beautiful, elaborate transition, because trust me when I say this, the judges don't want to see you hovering in a transition. They want to see the shot and they want to see it really, really, really concisely because if you get there first, what's going to happen? All eyes are on you. All eyes on you every time. So,
and you've got to remember, you're representing the federation, as it were. You know, now with social media being so prominent with all of the competitions, if you know, if you win a show, then you're going to be put across all of their social media, and they don't want someone standing there. You know, you've got to be in your power shot and be able to do that. And also you need to be able to do that fairly quickly, because when you win, they're like, right, top 3 photos, winner on your own, pose, and you're like, whoa, you know. So if you can have that in your mind, your 2 strongest poses, I'd definitely say,
you're winning shots.
That's going to be enough to carry you through those, you know, moments where if you do win or place, you've got that in the bank and you haven't got to think about it too much, because otherwise it's like, you know, oh, how do I do this? And then that comes across with the camera.
And you've mentioned something so important there, which is the camera. So your photographer, right, in order to get you good shots as a competitor to send you, needs some static shots. So, you know, I always sort of speak to people in the posing studio about, you're not just going in obviously to pose to try and place. You're posing also to get the best out of your package that you can on that day. And if that is a wonderful set of photographs, or seeing where the photographer is when you're doing like a pose down, for example, and you want to nail a shot towards the camera, get your shots, own your shots, like find a few good shots that you really want to do, look at the camera, look at where he is and get them, because they're yours, you're paying for them. So you want to like get those shots as well. And that's another part of the puzzle about posing, is remembering that you're not just posing there for the judges, you're posing there for yourself to get something to remember too. So you know, a lot of important stuff there. The most common one I always see is, guys do this too, but mainly in the female classes, is a lot of really long transitions, and the rest of the lineup's already there. And sometimes you just wish they'd got there that bit earlier, because then they're going into the next one before they've even had a chance to get to the shot potentially, or even just holding it for a split second. And by that point, you've potentially lost points on a comparison, and that's more important than a nice transition.
Yeah, because you mentioned there about doing timings. So what I tend to do myself, I don't know if it's something you cover as well, but I'll do like when I first start my posing practice, I do 3 seconds in each, like I do an eye walk basically. So I do 3 seconds. That warms the cockles a bit, things are a bit stiff, you've got your heels on and whatever. Second round, I do 10 seconds each pose and then the transition. Then I do 20 seconds, and then I do 1 minute for the posing fitness, which is really, really tough. And I also include, for the female posing, I do the 30-second one, the 20-second one. I do it where I come to the back, walk to the front, do my mandatories to the back, and then I walk to the back of it's in my utility room, but walk to the back of the stage and practice, because that is part of the bikini category, where they look for your how you hold your posterior chain walking to the back of the stage, you know. Then I do my back pose, side pose, front pose, come back to the front, and then do all the mandatories again. That's good for your posing fitness, because it takes quite a while to do that routine. But also, you know, I never ever, when I first started out, would have thought about practicing that walk to the back of the stage, where essentially the judges, I don't know what the right terminology is, but they're looking at if you've got cellulite, if your glutes are.
Yes, the duck walk, the stretch in the glutes, pushing back the hamstrings, keeping up the back, like keeping your shoulders back and tight. They're looking for your ability to walk tight, so that you're still showcasing your muscle without letting it all go. And that's just as important for sure. But I love what you just said there, and it's the tools that I use here. It's playing with tempo, because you've been in posing lineups. Well, some people, we have, obviously, if you've not done this before, you can expect some posing rounds to go quarter turn, quarter turn, quarter turn. And then you've got some posing rounds where they'll hold you and hold you and hold you, and then they quarter turn. And you need to be ready for both scenarios.
It's so hard. Like, I've been at shows where I've been on stage for like 45-50 minutes, and because I was in the first call outs, and then they called us forward like 5 times, and I was literally like, oh my god, I can't even move at the end of it. And then, you know, if I hadn't have practiced that, you're really in the gutter, and you need to last.
You do, and this is where I was coming back to what I said earlier about blurring or fading out. If you are somebody who's done that pose in fitness and you do have 5 or 6 call outs, you're potentially up there for a very long time. You need to be able to still be maintaining the level of fitness you had when you first came out by that 6th round. And that's somebody who's practiced. That is the nature of the practice.
And you don't know, if you win, you could be in the overall if the federation does that. And sometimes the overall is like only 2 classes later, isn't it?
Yeah, and it
you're literally like, oh my god,
go off, dry off, come back on.
And that, I guess, goes into another subject of how much would you recommend that people sort of run through their poses on show day? Because I do it quite mediocre almost on the day, just to get used to my heels and stuff. But I don't know what you recommend in regards to some people you see posing for about 4 hours before they're on stage. And I think, are you going to run out of your best performance if you did that?
Yeah. So if you're a competitor who has just the mandatories, compulsories, and a walk, I'd be saying the only time you should be practicing that posing is maybe once on show day, somewhere quiet, do your walk, go through it in your head and chill out. The official time to do that posing is in between your pump up. So you pump the muscles up, put your weights down or your bands down, do a round of posing, pause, take a breather, pump up, round of posing, pause. That's the official time you should be just running around your posing. You shouldn't be doing it, in my opinion, through the whole of your day. That's not the premise. But you're just depleting the body, you're depleting your energy stores, and you're just wasting your time when you could be relaxing and just keeping your mind set on the goal ahead. So for me, a competitor that maybe has a routine, I always recommend at some point, if you just want to, if you're really confident, it doesn't matter, but if you are somebody that wants to just run through it, go find a quiet space, put your earphones in, run around your routine a couple of times, and then leave it at that. Don't overdo it. You kind of overkill on moving about on show day, when the premise is relax, be a smart competitor, listen, go backstage when you're ready, go through your motion, pump up properly, go out and execute. By that point, if you've done the work, you shouldn't need to be running around posing for 4 hours on the day.
Yeah, it's for me, it's so much about bringing, like we said before, on peak week, I'm literally like a tramp for the week. Like, people really think, oh god, has she even had a shower this week? Because I'm just literally like going through the motions, doing the protocol that's set, and then as like you get 2 days out and the carbs come in and various other things, you slowly start to beautify. Show day, you have like hair, makeup, and you have that routine as you go through. And I don't know about you, but I don't put my bikini on until literally like 45 minutes before I'm on stage. I don't see the point, and I just don't. Every show I go to, I see it, and I'm not sure what you're getting from putting it on that early on, because that's the final part to the puzzle, and it's almost like you want that excitement close to stage, not, you're walking around seeing your family like 6 hours before you're on stage in your bikini, and it's sort of like I just don't understand it. I don't know.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. I think some of it comes from experience. Like you and I think the same now. I don't worry about my bikini until I'm ready and I know I'm about an hour out, and I go and I put it on and I make sure it's sitting nicely and everything else. I think some people, like people get frenzied, they think like, oh God, I need to have it all ready because I don't know when I'm going to be on. And everybody,
I mean, let's face it, they're not exactly comfortable, are they?
No, they're not comfortable. I mean, and let's be honest as well. Like, they're jewels. They're really jewels. The more you're wearing it, the more likely you are for jewels and things to potentially come off. The more you're kind of like, risking it just not being quite as showstoppy. You just want to kind of almost think. I understand some people wearing the bottoms, but remember, guys, like if you're at a venue for a few hours before you're on, you're going back and forth to the toilet most likely. You don't want to be wrecking your bikini whilst you're kind of just waiting and hanging about. So I mean, I think your point there is a pretty good one. Relating the bikini to the posing, practice with your bikini on. please do this, because I get so many girls who'll come in for their final peak week, like I had a couple of girls this morning, final peak week sessions, and almost like their dress rehearsals. And the amount of times they'll say to me, oh, I've just got it, it's the first time I put it on. And they're like, it feels so weird. And my biggest piece of advice would be, if you can, get your bikini at least a month if you can, or at least 2 weeks out if you have to have amendments right to the end, and get it on and wear it and wear it and wear it, just to feel it, to move in it, because they're a lot more structured and padded than you think they're going to be. And so when you suddenly put it on, it feels quite like, oh my god, it's quite heavy, it's quite restrictive, it's, you know, it does make you feel different.
I know Mandy at Black Ice always does 4 weeks out, and I definitely mirror what you said there. You know, you need to get a feel for that, because it's so different. And even like you say, because they are so structured and hard, I don't know, it can be quite uncomfortable to you almost wear it in a little bit.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And it's getting the placement right as well, because a lot of the time I recommend to my guys is putting the bikini on and filming yourself with it on, doing the posing, and make sure it's sitting where it should be. Because a lot of the time girls will come in here and I'll be saying, no, we have to adjust it. You need to pull these right up and get them much higher on the frame than you think you need to, because again, the suit is specifically designed and created, whether that's figure with the cross back or whether it's bikini with the, you know, the cross across the back, and the way they are then made to drop down at the back or drop down at the front, to actually emphasize the neatness of your waist and your taper. So having the positioning of the suit is vital to help you also get the most out your posing. So that's another thing that's about practice, knowing what you're doing. And of course, key tip, which I hope everyone would do, is buying the shoes well in advance and wearing them in as much as possible.
Massive thing. Like my shoes that I practice in, and then I practice in I always get new shoes for the stage, and I start practicing in them about 6 or 8 weeks out. The difference in how tight they are on your feet, even though they're the same pair of shoes, Christ almighty. And you need to wear those fuckers in.
Look at the state of these, right? Look at the state.
Steff, we know what we're getting you for Christmas.
Honestly, I wear these daily in here just as practice shoes, but you need to have the ones you're actually going to wear. And you're absolutely right, because they do, when you get a new pair, they're fresh, they're tight. And there's a lot of different tips you can give to, you know, helping the shoe stick to your foot, to the floor, etc. All of that with shoes, little key tips and things like that, depending, because sometimes the floors can be slippy, etc. But get your shoe and make sure you're tight in it and you feel good in it, and you're not, you know, slipping and sliding around in it, or
and also make sure you check what the federation rules are, because when you're competing with different federations, some of them you're only allowed like 5-inch heels, as an example. Some of them you're allowed 6, some of them you're allowed platforms, some of them you're allowed diamantes. So there's like so many different things that you need to think about, and also your bikini fit. And if you've got someone like Mandy, as we've both agreed, she's bloody insane. If you say to her, I'm competing with whoever, she'll go, right, okay, so we need to do that with bikini, and you don't have to think about it. But if you're using maybe a more independent bikini maker or a friend or whatever it is, make sure you know exactly what the criteria is for what you're wearing on your day.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the suit, the shoes, vital. Practicing as well with your jewelry on close to the show, that's vital too, because you don't want to have like big long earrings that are flipping in your face and things like this.
It's exciting as well, because you start thinking, oh my God, I'm going to look like this on my show day.
Yeah, I know, exactly. And I mean, the other thing is as well as hair. If you've got your hair down, and obviously if you've been working with a posing coach, they should, and I teach this with how to move the hair with the poses, etc. But if you are moving and say you've got tan on and maybe you're a bit sweaty, or you've got like a little bit of gloss on your lips and you move in a certain way and you get stuck like that, you know, these things matter, because if you want that flawless finish, you really need to think about how you're doing everything to make sure that nothing's going to throw you off ever. So
even like what side you'll do your hair to, because you know, if you're going to sweep to that side, practice that. If not that side, like you say, practice with your hair down, because first thing in the morning sometimes you just bung your hair up and you know, you just do the practice. But the hair thing is like, completely, if you're going to have extensions, if you're going to do different things, try and schedule that in at least a couple of weeks before the show so you can get the practice in, so there's nothing left to chance, basically.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I have a lot of people ask me about the hair, and it does depend on the class. You know, it does kind of depend on the class. But for people like in tone figure, particularly in classes like, federations like PCA, FitX, any class that has any federation that has a female routine part where you can take shoes off, for example, they're flipping around on the floor and their hair is blowing all over the place, which is great. But then they get up to do a pose and it's suddenly all, you know, and it's suddenly all over the face. And then you get your photos back and it's just hair everywhere because you've not had a chance to control it. So honestly, I've had quite a lot of girls that they do their compulsories with their hair down and it's maybe just neatly behind their shoulders. They're doing their actual lineup with it all down. But when it comes to the routine, we just quickly put up like a little top knot to something like that, half up, half down, that allows when you're flipping about, nothing to come into the front of the face. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. So it's tiny things like that. You just don't even think about it. The worst thing is when you're doing a routine in a figure class and your hair is covering your face everywhere, and then you're suddenly trying to move it in a sort of routine fashion, and it doesn't work. And you know, I'm an extreme perfectionist when it comes to posing now, to the point where everything matters if you want to look polished, you know. So it is thinking about every element, practicing with every element, taking your time to embed this into your practice, getting a posing coach if you can afford one, and not being afraid to, I think, go into a situation like a studio with me, for example. A lot of people are very nervous at first, and then if a good posing coach, in my opinion, should be there to help break down the confidence or the nerves that you have and help work with you in a way that's going to really bring you out. And that's very, very important. So you should be going to these posing sessions. I mean, I know I can say this off the top of my head, but I always say the very first thing I say is, we're going to have fun. We're having fun here. This is the fun bit. You still have to work very hard, but this is the fun bit where you can really start to actually see Sarah as the competitor come to life properly.
Yeah.
And this is the fun bit. So use that side of the whole structure to the competition prep to have some fun and find you the competitor in it, and it's worth it, trust me. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a posing coach, I'm just saying it because I know how much people get out of it. Yeah.
And I guess a good way to wrap up would be, which is something that I didn't really understand when I first started out, how close to a show would you recommend that you start working with a posing coach? Would it be as soon as you start a prep in an ideal world?
Yeah, I mean, I glossed over, I suppose, a question around off season last time, early on in the chat here, but I mean,
it's person dependent, I know.
It is so dependent, because sometimes I'll have somebody who's, not everyone is a natural mover.
Yeah.
And some people need it. They really, really need to come earlier because they're not a natural mover. And if you're somebody that feels like, you know, you're maybe not particularly
fluid,
then you're the person that needs to come a lot earlier. If you're somebody who, you know, I've had a lot of people who've come from dance backgrounds come into the studio and instantly we're connecting and we're kind of maybe on level 4. I've got stages that I go through, you know, before we're even done 1 hour. Then I know that person maybe needs a smaller amount, but needs the tuition on details. You know what I mean? Rather than the tuition on the building blocks. So it's, for me, the obvious answer is the more you do, the better you're going to be. And that's even for people who are very, very good posers. They still need to be practicing all the time.
Yeah.
But if I was to give like a kind of general rule of thumb, if you know that you've got, say, 12 months till you're on stage, and you're person A who's maybe a wee bit blocky and doesn't feel comfortable moving that well, you need to be coming 12 months out.
Yeah, cool. Yeah,
if you're person 2 who's more fluid and has maybe done a wee bit but not loads, you could probably get around, I don't know, 9 months. You really want to be starting still too.
Even just to get that first lesson in, get the foundations and get the practice protocol. Yeah. And
if you're off season, Yeah, I mean, people should do more than I think they necessarily believe that they should. It depends again on what your motivations are. If you're somebody like yourself, Sarah, who is, you're a pro bikini athlete, you're somebody who has got aspirations to continue being a certain level, then posing coaching for yourself is going to be, in my opinion, vital for your off season too.
Yeah.
But if you're somebody who is getting a feel for it and is still in the early stages, but still wants to tick over, a little touch-up session here or there is going to be absolutely fine until you suddenly realize, right, no, I need this to be something that is all-encompassing and
regular.
Working. Yeah.
No, I think it's just a good way to end it, isn't it? For people to understand, where they need to start doing that and how it fits into the protocol, as it were.
Yeah, 100%.
So for people looking to book lessons with yourself or get more information, is it best to go through ProPrep or reach out to you on your personal Instagram?
Either. I mean, I tend to put dates up a lot on my stories. I haven't been doing so much lately because I've been booked fully. Instagram is the best place to get me. I will send you a link directly to obviously the website to book. You can see what my packages are on proprepcoaching.com. There is a posing tab at the top which you can click on. The best way really is through the Instagram. My Steff Noble Figure Pro, is that who I am these days? Yes. Steff Noble Figure Pro on Instagram is the best place to get me. I tour around the UK. I do, because I'm based in Scotland, obviously I have a lot more availability up north, but I do 3 times a year travel: Leeds, Manchester, London, and if I can get one in Birmingham, I usually do. I'm also online. I have international competitors all over the world, so I do online through the week a lot as well. So if anybody needs that
and it doesn't matter what level people are, does it? Beginners, pros, whatever, you'll work with everyone.
I've got a really nice array of people that I work with, right from complete beginners, never even put a pair of heels on, right the way through to pro competitors. And for those listening who've maybe never thought about getting on stage but just want to have a play with shapes, I work with a lot of people going in for photo shoots. And we talk, we like, because you can see behind me here, I've got kind of a miniature gym. I'll show them how to stand against like pieces of equipment. I'll show them how to kind of move. I'll give them ideas for photo shots so that you can actually go into your photo shoots with an element of like owning some certain shots that you love, that you want the photos of as well. So that's
cool, isn't it?
That's always quite fun.
Yeah. Fun for you as well, something different.
Yes. And routines obviously is my forte. So choreographing the actual 60-second routines for stage, it's like my passion. So, from the actual dance point of view, I bring in fluidity with the more muscular shots and blend those together. And I work with obviously males and females across the board on those. So lots of stuff there.
It's good for people to know that, and that you're happy to work with, that diverse range.
Yes. Yeah.
So hopefully people found this useful, and as we always try and get people to hit us up on the Instagram stories or message us on Instagram, share the love, and any topic suggestions, send them in.
Yes, do it. We'll look forward to the next one.
Cool. Thank you, Steff. As always, a pleasure.
A pleasure always. Take care.
See you next week.
Bye.